Good morning, everybody. Councillors, members of the public, and people online, and welcome to this planning meeting of Somerset East, which is a little bit early in the morning for some of us. We are a little bit late starting due to waiting for a couple of people, and we will now be moving on. Okay, so first I've got to read out my chair's announcement. So please bear with me and take notice of what I'm saying. Thank you. This meeting is taking place in the council chamber at Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No, nobody's put their hand up. Thank you. Members who have brought their own device, Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off and, very importantly, that their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself. The vice chair, unfortunately, isn't here with us today. The legal advisor or the lead officers, please. Members in the chamber, remember to switch your desk microphone on so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent. Thank you. And now we move on to the apologies.
Thanks, Chair. So we've got two apologies. Councillor Edric Hobbs is unavailable today, so Councillor Roswyk is his substitute, and Councillor Rob Reid is absent, and Councillor Simon Carswell is his substitute. That's all. Thank you. Currently we've got Councillor Adam Boyden, who's running late.
Yeah, thank you. I confirm that Councillor Adam Boyden is running a little bit behind schedule because of the school run this morning, so he will arrive soon, I hope. Thank you. Okay, next we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been altered, I believe, or is that next time? I'm not sure. Right, here we go. So we go to, I just got to click them on here when this decides to work. Okay. Got it. Yes. Yes, Helen.
It's been recommended that we take these en bloc because there's so many changes, and I'd just like to thank Dawn de Vries, who I believe spent a whole weekend pretty much going through the listening to a recording of the meeting several times over, and I made some changes. She actually made a lot more changes than I did. And then I then have changed some of her changes. She's mostly accepted all of them. There's just one small point at the end. So I would suggest that any changes to the minutes are taken en bloc, apart from this one small change at the end, which I'd like to propose.
Okay, I think we can manage that. So let's go through, and then we'll do yours. What do we need to do that now, Ros?
Can I just talk about the more general issue of having minutes and then having changes upon changes upon changes? It's hugely time consuming for the officers and also the member at the time. But secondly, do you think we need to have a very clear statement as to what we're trying to minute in these particular minutes or any minutes, because they do seem to be not necessarily totally consistent from one application to another. And it's only when a particular issue which a particular member's anxious about that we have this level of detail. And I'm really concerned about where we go with minutes as a general principle, not necessarily decrying the changes or anything. I'm talking about the principle here.
I agree, actually, to an extent. Alison, would you like to come in on this, please?
Can I suggest that the Constitution and Governance Committee are about to look at the way in which committees are run, and that the Constitution, that we defer it for them to have a look at that aspect.
Thank you. I'm assured of that. Can we actually make it clear? I don't know how the Constitution and Governance Committee are going to be looking at it. Is this a working party? Is this an officer recommendation, or how are they approaching it?
The current proposal is to set up a small working group to look at it.
Okay, of the constitutional government members
Yeah.
only?
No, a mixture. The proposal at the moment, as I understand it, and Claire's in the room somewhere, is half and half. Half members of the Constitution Committee and half from the planning committees.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
And welcome, Adam, just in time. Yes, Helen.
Yeah, thank you. Given the scale of this application, I felt that the minutes did not accurately reflect a lot of the arguments that were put forward. And I also felt that the resolution was incorrect, and I've checked in with the proposer and the seconder on that matter, and they've agreed with me. And as I said, I've tried very hard not to make too many changes and to leave a lot of the original text in. And I would say that Dawn has changed 2 or 3 times as much as I changed. I believe she's done that in good faith, because she realises it's a very important application for this council, and therefore, you know, I'm sort of presenting this as a sort of joint endeavour, really, between myself and Dawn. So, except there's one small point at the end, which I'll mention now since I've got the microphone on, which is that Claire did say twice, she read out her proposal twice in the meeting, and I think she'll back me up on this, that overall she listed a whole load of impacts or harms, and she said that overall the harms outweigh the benefits, and that's what we voted on. And really that should be in the end. And if you look at the last page, there's a long paragraph there that what we resolved to do, and there's an extra section that Dawn's put in that starts near the end of that paragraph, that starts with the words "furthermore." Officers are advised at a forthcoming committee meeting the strength of reasons for refusal relative to the concerns raised to present the most optimal position for members to consider before taking final decision. So Dawn's put that in, but she's taken out my statement, which was that overall the harms outweigh the benefits. Now, the reason I thought it was important to put in is because it refers to NPPF paragraph 11. What Dawn has done is instead she's put it right at the top of the paragraph to say that we'd be minded to refuse the application on grounds of lack of sustainability, with officers to give consideration to whether the overall harms outweigh the benefits. Now, you might think it's a small point, but I do think it's quite an important point, because as a committee, that is what Claire said twice, that she felt that the harms outweighed the benefits. And I think that we still have that sort of stepping back from that point of view by having that furthermore section at the bottom of that paragraph that Dawn's put in, saying that they're going to come back and give us their opinion about which of these would be the best way to go forward if we were still minded to refuse. So that's my reason for wanting to just change this very small thing at the end. So yeah, I've said my piece. I don't know. I think Claire was next, and then Susanna. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might need a second for that, by the way. Thank you.
I'm never amazed. Okay, Martin. I'm never failed to be amazed by your attention. Claire.
So this is the first time, thank you, Chair, this is the first time I've ever queried minutes, and I want to thank Helen for Councillor Kay for assisting me with this. So when I spoke, I draft notes when I'm going to speak, and particularly if I was going to make a proposal for the committee. And Helen actually watched the video twice, and the minutes were just not reflecting what I said, and that's the issue. I don't think we need to start to talk about minutes in general and committees in general, but it's about reflecting what actually happened in the room, and that, you know, so that and I'm just a bit baffled why it's taken so many conversations and emails to kind of get it right, because there's a video recording and I have my notes too that from the time that date stamped, and that have guided me to where I am now and sitting now. So I think this is a specific case of minutes not being accurate.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Helen, you wish to say something?
Yeah, hi. So just regarding these minutes, we were spent a lot of time on them on the last meeting, and Helen and Dawn de Vries offered to work through them with Helen, and that has been done. And Dawn has chosen not to include your wording, your requested wording, and she has put forward what she thinks. And I do feel that now that it has been assessed by an officer, and a lot of time has been spent on these minutes, that the wording that Dawn de Vries has suggested and presented to you should be accepted en bloc, and we move on. We've spent a lot of time on these minutes, and we've got this meeting to get through by 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you also reminding people that we've got to be finished before 12. And I am aware, really, that we have used a lot of officer hours on this and thing. Hold on, I think Susie's first, Martin.
Yeah, okay.
I really was just going to say pretty much what Claire touched on, which is I have no recollection prior to this of us having issue with our minutes. I mean, there might have been the small, tiny thing, as there is in any meeting, anywhere, over minutes, but we've never had anything like this. So I don't think we have an issue with our meeting minutes ordinarily. I think this has just been a mess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Martin.
The suggestion is a very important inference in the change of wording. It's what we said. We didn't ask the officers to go back. We actually made a recommendation. That's what should be in it. And the video has been looked at. I don't want to talk about minutes generally. You know, we've been through that and we haven't got time. Can we just take a vote on whether or not we want to make that amendment to the minutes, please?
You go, Alison.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Kay, what amendment you're wanting to make? Because I don't think I'm clear. Is it just to delete the two words at the end of the first line? So it's to be minded to refuse the planning application on grounds of lack of sustainability and to give consideration to whether the overall harms outweigh the benefits, i.e. to delete the words with officers?
No. To basically after the word to, after consideration to, so it might be minded to refuse the planning application on grounds of lack of sustainability with officers to give consideration to, and then the list that's involved: impacts on transport network, environmental impacts, departure from local plan, disproportionate level of growth, etc. So basically that should be like a list, like you could have a colon there after the word to, not whether the harms outweigh the benefits. And then at the end of the section, that long list, it finishes off with saying that there's been insufficient surface and foul water management plans, insufficient Section 106 allocated to local town and parish councils. And it was there that I put in overall, the harms outweigh the benefits. Then that should be like almost like a separate paragraph, which Dawn has put in, which starts with furthermore. So it's a very subtle point, but I think that what Claire said was that the harms outweigh the benefits in her opinion, and we did want the officers to come back. and talk about, what they thought were the relative strengths of different refusal reasons. That's what you did at the subsequent February meeting. But we did not ask them to give consideration as to whether the harms outweigh the benefits. We, as a meeting, felt that they did.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Claire, you had your hand up.
Just to make it clear to everybody, I did not say to give consideration that the harms outweigh the benefits. I said the harms outweigh the benefits, and this is why.
All right, thanks, Claire. Susie, you wish to come back
Yeah,
as well?
as a linguist, I'd like to say semantics do matter. I suspect the legal advisor would agree completely that actually specific wording and how it is laid out does matter. And we have a recording and we have the person who said it. So I don't think this is a big deal. I think we can just change it, actually. I don't want to be disrespectful to Dawn or to the officers and the amount of work that everyone's put into this, but semantics do matter, actually.
Okay, thanks. So, well, actually, we have a legal officer here. Maybe you would like to give an opinion.
I don't think this change is material. I think you're potentially spending a lot of committee time on a trifling matter. I think you'd be better spending this time on the resolution that needs to be reached today.
Okay, we don't want to take too much time on these minutes because we've got.
I think there is a difference. I think there is a difference to say to consider when what I said was I believe. I think that's a difference. If I say to consider that the harms, it means I'm not sure myself. And it's only been delayed because this has been pushed back on. That's the only reason. Why can't we just make this simple change? Yeah. I propose that we change it to the wording that I actually said, that I believe the harms outweigh the benefits.
Okay. Simon, you wish to come in?
Yeah, again, members, just listening to what you've said, you've obviously had the advice from the legal advisor today. In a way, he's correct. I don't see a problem with adopting the change that Councillor Kay has put forward. But the focus for you today, it's not about determining the planning application. It's not about resolving whether or not you wish to refuse the application. It's about resolving the position that you want the council to take forward to the Paulin inquiry.
Thank you, Simon. I think, Helen, do you understand that?
Yes, but it's a separate issue. I believe that within 2 weeks of this application being called in, that the main bits of paperwork had to be sent to the inspector, including the draft minutes that did not reflect what happened in the meeting. I would like to know that after we've approved of these minutes today, that they will be sent to the inspector. And I think this is really important that he sees what really happened at the meeting. I don't know if he will rerun that meeting. I don't know if inspectors do bother with that. But if they don't, then this is really important that he sees these minutes. And that's why I'm attaching a lot of importance to them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done so much work on them either.
To help, I can guarantee the inspector will not care, but I don't detect any pushback. I think a vote on this matter might just resolve the issue.
There are 2 votes, one to accept my amendments and one to accept the minutes as a whole.
Okay.
What vote was your change?
It could be 1 vote to accept the minutes with my amendment. Yeah, thank you, Helen. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got to go through the pages here first. Okay. Then we'll do it. On block, yeah. On block, yeah. Okay, but let's go through these first so that people can see if there's anything else they're not overly happy with. Right, okay, so we've got to go to, I think it's page 13 we start at. Okay, just let me know if you see anything you don't like. Okay, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We are all happy. Okay, so we will go to the vote. Take it. So can I have a proposer, please?
I've already proposed, and I think that Martin seconded, that we accept all the changes, including the small amendment at the end on the resolution.
Yeah, that's you. So you're proposing it. I'm just getting this right. Okay. Martin, you're seconding. Okay. All those in favour? Okay. All those against? And all those abstaining? So we've got.
Yes, she was there. Yeah. Yeah. Ros, I read it out, but I can read it out again if you like. Have you got the resolution up at the end? Okay, but she needs to. Yeah, I have read it out. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on, and that was the minutes were accepted, but the point has been made. Okay, thank you. So we now move on to, I think it's. I have to find this back on here again. Should be there, shouldn't it? Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, hold on. So we're moving over to. Yeah, Gwyneth now. I think public speakers first, isn't it?
Declarations of interest.
Declarations of interest. Yeah. Can't find it on here. Ah, hold on. Let's see.
This is your agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the agenda.
Yeah. So scroll down. So this.
Oh yeah, we're back
Done
to
the
normal.
minutes,
Yeah,
done
we're back
that,
to normal.
done that, and then on to Gwilym. So that one and that one.
Okay. Yeah, now we're back to normal. Okay then. So we'll have declarations of interest. None. Okay. Public question time. None. So we then move on to number 5, the planning application at land south of Frome, bounded by Marston Road. And Gwyneth, I think this goes over to you.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in terms of the, just a reminder in terms of the site we're dealing with, land south of Frome, and the full address there, the outline application. I say that the purpose of today's meeting is not to determine the application. I'll explain that in detail, but that's just a description of what the proposed development is. And that just identifies the location of the application as just as a reminder. So the A361, the Frome bypass, most of the essentially the southern edge, Marston Road, located to the south of Frome. Just wanted to run through the key events and kind of how we've got here today. So the application was reported to committee in December last year, and as we've had the discussion just now, committee was minded to refuse the application, with a further report to identify potential reasons for refusal to be presented back to members. That was going to happen on the 4th of February 2025 this year. However, the day before, the Secretary of State issued a letter to the council calling in the application, and therefore Somerset was no longer the determining authority. That will now be dealt with at a public inquiry. I'll go on to the timetable in a minute, where the inspector will consider the application in full, all the material which has been submitted, and they will consider it at that point, and the Secretary of State will make the decision. In terms of the meeting on the 4th of February, therefore, the committee simply noted the call-in and requested a further report to committee to determine the council's position at the public inquiry and to address the matters identified in the call-in letter. That's just a summary of the resolution, but those are essentially the two items to be covered in the further report, which is before you today. In terms of the programme leading up to the public inquiry, some of these have already passed. So we had the official letter from the Planning Inspectorate, which is essentially the start date, which sets the programme of events leading up to the public inquiry. And then there was a deadline by the 7th of March in order to notify people of the inquiry and to produce a schedule of documents. So basically, all the application documents have been sent to the Planning Inspectorate, and they've received those. They have all the information there. We'll supplement that with the minutes from the December meeting, as it's just been agreed. So, in terms of the initial statements about the details of the case to be put forward in inquiry, that was due by the 4th of March. There has been agreement with the Planning Inspectorate that it is submitted by, 4th of April, that it's by the 8th of April. So a little bit more time to get that together, and also submit the statement of common ground between the council and the applicant, including conditions and section 106 heads of terms, which were set out in the committee reports previously, and there have been some slight amendments to those, to the heads of terms, and that will be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate next week. There'll then be a case management conference where the inspector it's an online meeting, and the inspector will identify matters in dispute between the council and the applicant, if there are any. That's an opportunity for all parties to attend that. And then following that, proofs of evidence, and in July, if there is going to be if those are required by the council, that is, and then the 8th of July, just a notification letter, and then the inquiry itself will start on the 29th of July. It's identified as being for 12 days sitting, essentially 3 weeks. And in that, the inspector will consider all the material submit before them. They will be determining the application in full. So rather than, for example, where the council decides to refuse a planning permission, and there might be one or potentially more reasons for refusal, and that would be the focus of the inquiry. Here, the inspector will consider all the material in front of them rather than just selected items. And I think that's important just to understand in terms of the process there, in terms of what they will be considering. So it'll be the full range of information which was submitted with the application, and also any material submitted by third parties and the council of the applicant at the inquiry. In terms of the letter from the Secretary of State, there was a specific request for the council where the Secretary of State was wanting to be informed about certain matters relating to the National Planning Policy Framework, and those are just the particular chapters which they identified, and then the extent to which the proposed development is consistent with the development plan for the area. Assessment is in the context of the development plan as a whole, so not just individual policies, and the report does identify those where there is consistency or not. And also, so it's, say, one example is whether it's within the defined settlement boundary or not. There are other matters, but I think the important thing is here that just they identified the general consistency. The inspector obviously will be making their own decision on this, but these are the items which they had particularly identified. In terms of the council's position at the inquiry, there are various options available to it. There could be proactive support for the application, where the council would need to present evidence or witnesses in support of that. Could be proactive opposition, and where again council would need to present evidence, could oppose development on one or more grounds, or on all matters. But I think it's important there need to be very clear about what those matters are, which it is not opposing and as well. Or it could adopt a strictly neutral position, so it would attend the inquiry that would be represented by, legal representative of the inquiry, and we'd have to obviously deal with all those procedural matters which are in those previous slides. But the council would not submit a statement of case or call witnesses. It would be basically presenting the inspector has all the information in front of them, and they will come to a decision based on that, and any representations are made. I think it's important to note that there is still an opportunity for representation to be made in respect of planning conditions and planning obligations if they're not agreed, and that runs effectively up to the inquiry almost. So there is an opportunity, and there may be a separate session at the inquiry to deal with those matters. So that is still a live issue, as it were. The council will be represented at the inquiry, but also third parties can make their own representations to the inquiry, so that if whatever route is pursued, that is all obviously third parties still have that opportunity to do so. In terms of the recommendation, it is that the council adopts a strictly neutral position in respect to the proposed development of the public inquiry, and offers no evidence against the principle of development, and only contests conditions and or financial contributions, Section 106 obligations, if they're not agreed. That resolution, the recommendation in the report, there were two parts to it, but this is the critical issue for today is the position the council adopts, and it is recommended it does adopt a strictly neutral position. In terms of the matters for the inquiry, the resolution was simply to address them rather than seeking the council's approval or agreement to them. So that's all for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, we're all finished with you. Thank you for that, Gwilym. Very good. Okay, so we go on to some public speakers, and our first one will be Dr. Patricia Smith from the Frome Civic Society, please. You have 3 minutes. Okay, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm green.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The question before you today is whether SGC is consistent with national planning policy and the development plan. The Civic Society, which I represent, says it is not. That case might be argued if this were just another housing estate on the fringes of Frome. The elephant in the room, which everyone seems to have studiously ignored, is the sheer size of SGC, and size matters. With 1,700 homes, workspace, schools, services, this would be the second largest development in the whole of Somerset. Only at Taunton, which unlike Frome has a strong urban and transport infrastructure, will you find anything on this scale at all. And you will find nothing on this scale being brought forward outside a local plan. There are clear NPPF policies on identifying suitable land for new settlements or significant town extensions like SGC. These require you to consider matters beyond the housing quantum, including existing and planned infrastructure investment, economic potential of the area, net environmental gain. None of this has been done on SGC, and none of it can be done outside the development plan. Our prime concern as a civic society is the failure to comply with NPPF policies that govern project design. For a large-scale development, quality assurance must be established at the start and, importantly, maintained over time. This assurance cannot be provided for SGC, which offers no guiding master plan and no recognised governance framework. The proposed design delivery process is unworkable and frankly bizarre. It would depend on compliance with a full written document containing generic guidelines, no quantifiable measures, no criteria. This document cannot carry weight in decision making because it does not follow the Model National Design Guide, nor is it part of or supplementary to a local plan. To fill the governance gap here, as land parcels are sold off phase by phase, house builders would be required to draft and get approval for design codes before each reserved matters application. This would place a double burden on developers and planners and create conflicting interests. This can only lead to a poorer quality, less cohesive development, plus likely delays to homes and infrastructure. I repeat, SGC is a huge strategic project. It is not just a housing development. Despite its scale and potential impact for harm, it is not within or supported by any local plan, and it offers no viable means of achieving the relevant planning policy requirements. If no evidence is offered against this application, that is tantamount to supporting it, as you know. Please, will this committee insist that the council proactively opposes something which is simply wrong? Given your minded to refuse decision in December before the call-in, it is right and reasonable for you to oppose this application, and therefore you should not remain neutral at the planning inquiry.
Thank you. Can you wind up, please?
I have wound up.
You have wound up. Thank you very much. Okay, you have over 3 minutes. Okay, the next one is Mark Pollock from the Friends of the River Frome. Mark, you have 3 minutes as well.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Friends of the River Frome object to this development, which risks having a serious detrimental impact on the natural environment, contrary to the NPPF. The River Frome is currently only of moderate ecological status due to regular sewage spills and other pollution. In 2024, figures released just yesterday from the Environment Agency, there were sewage spills into the river from 13 storm overflows located around the town for over 544 hours, a 26% increase from the 2023 data. So sewage spillage into the river is getting worse, not better. The existing town-wide foul drainage infrastructure is therefore already over capacity. One significant source of sewage spillage locally was from the Frome treatment works at Inox Hill, where sewage generated by this large-scale development will be pumped to, as shown by the submitted indicative-only foul drainage strategy. Although on-site emergency storage tanks are suggested, the submitted strategy makes it clear that phasing is not considered at this stage. Therefore, nobody knows at the point of determining this application how many houses will be built and occupied and over what time period before the emergency overflow tanks become operational. This lack of upfront detail represents a major risk of additional sewage spills into the river to the detriment human health and wildlife, contrary to NPPF paragraph 187 and the Water Framework Directive 2017. Wessex Water's lack of objection and reliance on only one condition relating to an indicative-only strategy can give little confidence in view of the poor track record of sewage spills into the river. These concerns are magnified by the complexity of delivery with multiple builders over a 15-year build-out period. Without the right level of detail and assurance at this stage for a development of this scale. There is a real risk to river quality and that the ecological status of the river will fall from moderate to poor. River quality is not mentioned in the latest officer report in the context of consistency with Chapter 15 of the NPPF. Finally, the proposed playing field within the Riverside Park is not considered to be water compatible, as it will be unusable during flooding events which are becoming more frequent and intense. The site significantly encroaches into flood zones 2 and 3 and would be better used for natural flood management as advocated by the NPPF and River Froome strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
And thank you very much. And you came in under your 3 minutes. That's very good. Okay, next we have Johanna Maggs from Stop SGC. You have 3 minutes as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, I'm here to represent the 500 plus objectors to SGC, as the name of our organisation suggests. Your previous decision was minded to refuse. Today you're being asked whether the proposed development is consistent with government policies. On the issue of transport, it is not. Under the latest NPPF section 116, it says development can be refused on highways grounds if the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. We believe this is the case. Our own analysis, using the same figures FBA has, differs greatly from the evidence you've been presented with. That transport assessment is based on 3 models: a traffic survey in 2020 as the baseline, Future-Based 2029 adding traffic from all the sites allocated in the local plan, including 1,728 new cars in Frome, and Future-Based plus SGC, which is estimated to add a further 4,000 cars. Incredibly, though, the applicant's figures show that despite 2.3 times more cars on Frome's roads, this only contributes to an uplift of 18% at the AM peak and 12% at the PM peak. And that's strange, we thought, especially when you consider that 68% of Frome residents commute by car, but suddenly only 44% of SGC residents will commute by car. Stranger still when you read the details and see the applicant is suggesting 30% of SGC's residents will car share, despite that figure being just 6% for the rest of Frome. Even Jacobs Consulting in their report questioned this, so why hasn't Somerset Council? If we assume that SGC residents will act like the rest of Frome's residents, then surely we can just prorata the figures applied to the 1,728 cars in the local plan to the 4,000 for SGC. And when modelled, what this actually looks like is an uplift of 85.2% at the AM peak and 91.3% at the PM peak over the current baseline. Okay, that's loads of details, but this is just a snapshot of the problems with the SGC application because the applicant is marking their own homework. This one instance of inconsistency with the NPPF gives you scope to vote to disagree with the statement in Vote 1 today. It also raises worrying questions about its consistency with any government policies. You're being asked whether you agree that SGC is consistent with government policies set out in the Officer's Report, Section 5.1. Yet that same report, Section 5.2, states that the list is not definitive. So I simply ask how you can vote to agree to something that is not yet defined, effectively waving through the biggest development of its kind outside of a local plan anywhere in the country. Despite all the obfuscation, what is fundamentally clear is that SGC is just too big and in the wrong place.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Next we go to Councillor Steve Tanner, please, from Frome Town Council. And you have 3 minutes as well, Steve.
Thank you, Nick. It's on. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Frome Town Council starts in the outset has been that we prefer to see a comprehensive master plan development rather than ad hoc piecemeal developments, which are disconnected and provide no meaningful benefit to the town. We objected to the application because while SGC provided this, we also had red lines we felt that needed to be addressed should the application be improved. Many objectors were related to the lack of infrastructure uplift, and the only way to improve this is via Section 106 agreements, which is where we focused our efforts. Since the application was last discussed by this committee, we've had the opportunity to conduct detailed discussions about those red lines with the applicant, Soil Parish Council and from Somerset councillors. The discussions with the applicant have been
constructive and enabled FTC to move forward to removing our objections to the application. You will hear separately from Selwood. We know this will be hard for some residents to hear, but as an independent council, we always think about what is best for all of Frome. We must be pragmatic. We have declared a housing crisis, and we know there is a desperate need for affordable housing, as evidenced by Home Finder. The lack of suitable housing was the #1 concern in our recent engagement study. Of course, we always lament the loss of green spaces and are conscious that this is a deviation from the local plan. However, we can't ignore the constant messages coming from the government with regards to house building and indeed the new increased targets. This leads us to believe that the application is likely to be approved by the Secretary of State. As mentioned, our stance on all applications has been to try and get the best from any development. It was agreed, given the national picture, it would be better to work towards securing more from the development, and we initiate discussions to have as much influence as possible. The additions that have moved us towards removing our objection to our committee report are the highways works at the butts, medical provision on site, intermediate affordable housing, safeguarding some for active travel, sustainable transport, the employment land delivery, and off-site sports contributions. We also have agreed that 100,000 has been to cover feasibility studies for the A361, A362 junctions, and the addition of a clause in the section 106 that requires any developer making any form of application to the site to send a hard copy of the application to both the Town Council and the Parish Council, either before or on submission. We feel that if we all work together, Frome Town Council, Somerset Council and Selwood Parish Councils, and really hold developers to these outline plans and design principles framework, we can achieve an exemplary development that will go some way to meeting Frome's housing needs in a sustainable and managed way, rather than piecemeal developments with minimal section 106 contributions. I hope the developer will set up a delivery company and include local voices in this. It's also worth noting that the plans have some welcome sustainability elements, such as solar panels and no gas boilers. We intend to ensure these are retained also. Finally, given the efforts that we and Selwood Parish Council have made towards improvements of Section 106, we would urge the Council to ensure that all additional contributions are secured by conditions and the Section 106, agree these with the Inspector, and further commit that both the Town and Parish Council should be included in all Section 106 going forward. As Selwood Parish Council, we do have concerns, but we hope we can work through these in a constructive way. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Steve. That's good. Next, we have Councillor Jim Dowling from, Dowling, sorry, from Selwood Parish Council. Oh, you're online, are you? Are you there, Jim? Okay, we'll move on to the next person and come back. Okay, so if Jim arrives or comes online, we will come back to him. Okay, next is Councillor Mick Dunk. You have 3 minutes, Mick. Mick, can you explain what you just said? Because it wasn't audible. You weren't on the microphone.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, he sent in a PowerPoint. I couldn't open it because I don't have the mechanism on my computer to play it, but it was a PowerPoint, and I wondered whether he expected this council to play it, but I'm not sure whether we can. If he isn't around.
I distributed it to the committee, so they have had a chance to look at it in advance, and I presumed he was going to.
I couldn't open it on my council computer.
I could.
Okay, Mick, thanks for that information. Now you can have your 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Bear with me if I go slightly over.
Okay.
An urban extension to Frome of this scale should be subject to the scrutiny of our development plan process to identify suitable strategic sites. A similar development, a garden neighbourhood on the outskirts of Taunton, is in Somerset West and Taunton's core policy. Our planning officer commented, "This is a proposal of unprecedented scale for Mendip. A substantial amount of growth is already planned for Frome and agreed in the adopted plan, and the proposal would result in a disproportionate level of growth in Frome compared with other principal settlements. Local Plan DP4 states Mendip District is defined by its landscapes. Proposals for development that would individually or cumulatively significantly degrade the quality of the local landscape will not be supported. Cranbourne Chase National Landscape Board objects, citing the impact on the setting and of artificial light on the dark skies, the first in the UK, which took them 10 years to achieve. The CPRE objects, citing the loss of farmland and the substantial harm to the landscape setting of the town and its river. I contacted a landscape architect about the SGC application. They know the area well and have worked on local plans and planning appeals for Mendip. They said, Frome is appreciated as having a strong landscape setting. From all directions approaching the town, the urban area is well contained and the landscape reads as functional countryside. The Selwood proposals would fundamentally change the perception of the landscape within the bypass. The existing rural setting to the bypass, this side of Frome, would be degraded and potentially lost. Its proximity to the town means the minor lanes and footpaths have a higher value as recreational resources. These routes provide views out to the wider landscape. This wider landscape also contributes to the centre of Frome being set within an extensive tract of very attractive countryside. They also said the internal landscape that is indicated on the proposal plans would be effective in creating a pleasant place in which to live, but in reality does very little to reduce the harm that existing residents of Frome and those who pass the town would experience. Last year, the committee concluded they were minded to refuse and that overall the harms outweigh the benefits. The council now propose that you agree the application is consistent with government policies and the development plan. It is not. The report is also asking us to accept that the housing gains outweigh all the cumulative harms arising from the non-compliance with our policies. It does not. In my opinion, the council should not be taking a neutral stance. The council were previously prepared to support a refusal on landscape grounds and should at least be prepared to do so now. It is for the committee to decide the stance adopted at the inquiry.
Okay, thank you, Mick. Next, it's Shane. Councillor Shane Collins, please. And Shane, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So this proposal is the largest urban expansion of Frome since St Albans founded our town over 1,300 years ago. 1,700 houses, 6,000 people and 4,000 cars. Frome's population is around 29,000, so it's a 23% increase in population in one hit. It's unprecedented on many levels. As we've heard, it is the only development of this size in the country which is not part of a local plan, so it has not been scrutinised properly. We know the illustrative master plan is, to quote LVA, a plan that simply shows one way in which the site could be developed. As you've heard from earlier speakers, and I hope read, the detailed transport critique from Selwood Parish Council, which takes apart the 2019 traffic projections from Neil Brandt Consulting. Indeed, the modelling suggests an increase of 82% traffic in the morning and 91% in the afternoon. This will be a car-based development, which is completely at odds with our climate emergency targets and will lead to severe traffic congestion and likely need a one-way system in Frome in the future at great cost to Somerset Council. NPPF paragraph 115 states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residential cumulative impact on the road network would be severe. I hope you will agree that the current housing permissions granted, including 1,729 cars and the 4,004 cars from SGC, will produce an unacceptable and severe impact on Frome's medieval road network. If ever there was a case of today's solutions being tomorrow's problems, this looks like it. We've heard from the Friends of River Frome how this will cause more sewage in the river. We've read about the build-out times. The first house is not built until year 6, so it will not affect our 5-year targets for years to come, leaving us open to more predatory development. We know the 4,008 social rent homes by year 15 will not help the families currently on the waiting list. We know LVA are not developers, they are, quote, land promoters, investors and asset managers. On the sale of the 240 acres, they stand to make around £22 million before selling on the site, probably on a phase or field basis to individual developers. I stress again, developers do not have to follow the illustrative master plan. So, on behalf of more than 500 people and civic bodies in Frome who've objected, I urge you to vote against the 2 recommendations, as the application is inconsistent with national planning policy on many grounds, but in particular local transport. Thank you.
And thank you, Shane. Cheers. And next we have the applicant or an agent is Matthew Kendrick, sorry. Matthew, you have 3 minutes.
I think I'm on. In December, you received a very detailed report setting out why planning permission should have been granted at that time. And since then, the new NPPF makes this support even clearer, and your officers have set out in detail why the concerns raised in December would not have been sustainable reasons for refusal. Many applicants would have taken the Council's previous resolution as a reason to proceed to the inquiry with a streamlined scheme that cuts back on Section 106 contributions and other measures and avoid further engagement. Thankfully for me, because I genuinely consider this scheme to be exemplar, LVA have not taken such an approach and have instead worked with the local community and members since December to secure additional contributions, which include commitment to delivery of the employment land early, more flexibility on how the sports contribution can be spent, additional highways contributions to deal with the concerns raised about the A361 at Rodden Down, a new GP monitor and provide contribution, even though the NHS say that contribution is not required, a commitment to marketing affordable housing products to Frome residents first, confirmation that the Butts highway contribution can be spent elsewhere if the works have already been delivered, flexibility to allow the £1 million plus sustainable travel contributions to be spent more flexibly and in consultation with Frome Town Council, and confirmation of the safeguard sum of £718,000 to be spent if modal shift targets are not being met. This is all evidence of LVA and my willingness to engage positively with the local community to get the best out of this scheme for Frome and not simply ride roughshod over local opinion, some of which is supportive. We should lose sight of that. Many other developers would have not worked so diligently and carefully with the local community over many years, something that Frome Town Council and members of Selwood Parish attest to. Your land supply now stands at just over 2 years instead of the required 5. There are currently thousands of households registered in housing need in the former Mendip area and hundreds in Frome itself, with 27 registered as homeless. In a rural settlement of like Frome, that's scandalous. We will deliver 510 affordable homes and, as requested, have changed the mix so 80% of those will now be social rent. There's simply no other site to address the housing emergency in Frome. Objectors don't have alternative sites and nor does the council, with a new plan being many years away. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through the long list of benefits that have been listed many times before. In total, this scheme is committed to deliver 27 million of new infrastructure, and when affordable housing is taken into account, that's more like 78 million. This huge investment remains on the table in full if you support your officer's recommendation today. But if not, this package may change significantly and the community will lose control of future design stages. I don't want that to happen. The parameter plans are set in stone. The master plan that follows isn't, but the parameter plans are, we know where land uses are going, we know where green spaces are going. Accordingly, I ask you to support the recommendation to allow us to keep working together to deliver the best possible scheme for the town. that does not condemn it to continued unplanned development that does not deliver the phased infrastructure that this scheme will. Thank you.
And thank you, Matthew. Okay, so we're going to move on to members of the committee. Oh, Helen, you wish to speak? Jim arrived.
Just wanted to say about Councillor Dowling. He was invited. He did ask to attend, or his PA asked on his behalf, and that was accepted. So he just hasn't arrived, unfortunately. So there's nothing more we can do on that one, I'm afraid.
There's no more we can do?
No.
Okay, that's a bit sad, but yeah. Oh, Susie, yes, I was getting ready now. Yeah.
I just wondered if we had anything from him that could be read out, or any.
There was a PowerPoint which was sent round yesterday, which Adam is pointing at. That was already distributed yesterday. Yeah.
If you would like it read out, if it's passed to me
I don't
or
think
to
you can read
Helen,
out a PowerPoint.
we can't do it, can we? Really?
It's very long and no.
Yeah. Okay.
But it has been sent round, so members have seen it.
So people have seen it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the main thing. Okay, then. So let's now go to the committee. Helen, you wish to come in first? Can we be to the point today, please? Thank you.
I always try to be to the point, Chair. I asked officers if they could clarify a few points by email. I sent an email out on Tuesday. I didn't get written clarification, but I did speak to Gwilym yesterday. And as far as I can see, on page of the paper, on page 3, there's a recommendation in 2 parts. So one of my questions was that are we going to take these recommendations separately? Gwilym might want to repeat what he said to me yesterday, or maybe we can get some legal advice, because to me it seems like we have to agree to the extent of which those 5 things that the inspector is going to be looking at, actually how this application is judged against those 5 things. And I feel that on 1 or 2 of those that we fail, that this application fails, but I may yet agree to adopt a strictly neutral position. My second question, which kind of follows on from that, is that if we adopt a neutral position, I'm just reading this out here, it says, in respect to the proposed development at public inquiry, wherein the council will offer no evidence against the principle of development. Is that not actually tantamount to us supporting the development, but supporting it weakly, as in pathetically, rather than supporting it proactively? Is that not effectively, by default, the same thing by just going neutral and not putting forward any defence? So it's a kind of technical question, but when we open the debate, I would actually like to talk about those 5 criteria and whether or not we meet those 5 criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Legal, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to clarify so it's absolutely clear what the consideration is today. So there is going to be a public inquiry, which will be in a room not dissimilar to this, not this room. And in that, the appellant will be presented, and they will be represented by a barrister who will have a suite of technical witnesses who will be presenting evidence to an inspector, a single inspector. The inspector is not the decision maker. The inspector will be writing up a report. That report will then go to the Secretary of State. The inspector will hear everyone who wants to speak, and that report will go to the Secretary of State. And upon reading that report, the Secretary of State will make a decision. So the question that's being asked here is not to determine the decision, as in determine the application. That will be the Secretary of State. It's to determine what evidence, if any, is going to be presented by the council formally to that inspector who will be at the public inquiry. Now, the recommendation, there's been a revision, and that's come from me. It's not in 2 parts. The only recommendation that needs to be dealt with is whether the council are going to support, be neutral, or oppose it. So it's only the second part of the recommendation that you need to concern yourself with. And that's simply that the first part is it just doesn't need to be dealt with one way or another. It's only the second part that ultimately needs to be decided today. And in adopting a strictly neutral position, it's not a weak endorsement or otherwise. It's simply that the council are offering no evidence at all. And that doesn't preclude any member of the public from attending that public inquiry and making their representations to the inspector. It doesn't preclude any councillor in this room from attending that public inquiry and making any representation to the inspector. It simply are the council as a corporate body going to be expending the resources to attend that inquiry with technical witnesses and essentially presenting a wholesale case against the scheme for that inspector to determine. I hope that's clear as to what's being determined and what the strict and neutral position would involve.
Can I just add to that and reiterate what Gwynam said in his opening slides? The inspector will be considering all material planning considerations, not just any issues that are raised by members here in this room or members of the public, but everything. That because they are now the determining body, as they effectively are making the decision on the application. It's not like a normal appeal. And I think it's really important that everybody in this room understands that all the considerations and issues that have been raised by the speakers, including the highway matters, will be matters that will be addressed in great length by the inspector. And as Killian has just explained, the applicants will need to present the technical evidence to the inspector in that regard.
Chair, could I come back? Oh.
Called in, it means this council aren't the decision maker. At no point the council can make a decision. And it's simply the Secretary of State's called it in. They are going to be the decision maker. And a strictly neutral position is essentially saying to Secretary of State, well, then you be the decision maker. We're not going to make a decision one way or another. We're not going to spend resources on it. You're the decision maker. So we're going to be neutral and leave it to you because you've asked to call it in. So therefore, it's for you to make that decision.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. And I think that should sink into people around the table and they understand what's been said. Helen, okay, you were first to come.
Yeah, I just want to follow on from that. So if this committee were minded to proactively oppose this, the consequences for the council would be that they would let's say for the sake of argument that it would oppose it on the transport issue, and that there hadn't been sufficient work done on how it's going to impact on the town of Frome and the road network in Frome. I understand that there have already been monies put aside for outside. Let's say, for example, that I'm not arguing that point just yet. What that means for the council then is that because our officers have not objected, and the Highways Agency and Highways England have not objected, where does that put us? Does that mean that we then would have to get a specialist in that and the council would have to pay for it? Is that basically what it means? Okay, I see Alison is nodding. All right, thank you.
Yes, that is the position.
And have we got any ideas of the costs of that, just as a matter of interest?
Considerable, I would suggest.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There's two components to the cost. So the first cost is the council themselves expending resources on trying to find a consultant. That's on the assumption one can be found who will offer evidence against the statutory consultee. But even if, so there's that cost, but then against that is also there's the appellant who has indicated that were the council to contest the inquiry on matters such as highways, they would be seeking their costs, which they've indicated are a very substantial amount of money. So there's two elements of the costs there.
Okay, thank you for that. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So our lead planning officer kindly talked us through why we're here today, which was good. But I just want to briefly say why we're here today, because I think the perspectives are important to consider. So we're elected members, okay, we're trusted to make decisions, and we look at whether harms outweigh benefits in respect of our communities and development. The vote, why are we here? The vote was delayed by being minded to refuse, which is where I was guided and led with the understanding that officers would work with members on our concerns about this application and articulate our reasons for refusal. Why are we here? The government has called it in. Planning house building is a political football for the government, and it seems they're in a panic to score a goal, but I think it's an own goal, and Frome is not the place for this kind of game. Why are we here? We're not here to refuse housing for the sake of it. We want to solve the high housing crisis, but we want to do it the right way and not at any cost for the local area. So has my position changed? The issues on the scale, pulling out a couple of from the long list, the scale and the impact on the local environment and the sustainability of the infrastructure. But the piecemeal phasing model really concerns me, and the enforcement of the vision through a robust delivery model. The town council said, I noticed a few times it used the word hope relating to the delivery model. Is it going to be robust? Is it going to be enforced? They also said we hope for a constructive working relationship. It's uncertain, isn't it? It's uncertain with the idea of piecemeal phaser model and the fact that do we have developments with some council that are enforced? Even the 106 and seal arrangements are currently, there's a number of them that are not enforced. So the reason I gave before being led away by being minded to refuse still stand. And so my decision today will be based on my conscience and what we should be doing for the benefit of our communities. Because I think we'll be judged. I think we will be judged in the future if we don't make the right decision and don't stand up for what we believe in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I think the next person to speak is Ros.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting. Claire's spent some time talking about the role of councillors. And one of the things I would say is I think we need to have a balanced approach to things, and that is treating the whole of the planning East area evenly rather than responding to the particular pressure of one particular application or one community. Interestingly, you talked, Helen, about money to do things. I live in a small community, a very small parish council of 800 people, yet we've raised considerable funds to buy in specialist help to actually support the community's response to an application. And I think that, you know, the members of Frome and the community of Frome could do that in this case. I don't think necessarily accepting that it is the district council or the former district council responsibility in some respects. There's been some very wild statements about the numbers, and I'd just like to put some of it in perspective. Frome currently, I think, Shane acknowledges is about 29,000 people, and this planning application is for 1,700 houses over 15 years. And to put that in context, down the road in Wells, small community, was 8,000, has already grown with housing to 12. It's still got 1,000 plus houses, but it's been fragmented. You've not had the advantage of a single application. The benefits which Frome will get is quite considerable. And that's alongside having a decent train station, which Wells doesn't have. It doesn't have the infrastructure in terms of a bypass and all the other things in the way that Frome has. So I just think that we just need to be mindful that when it's your own backyard, you do feel very strongly about something, about change and about movement. But I just think I think we just need to look about this. This is 1,700 over 15 years. That's just over 1,000 a year, with significant benefits. I mean, if you look at the benefits I've seen not arrive in Wales, but you've got 27 million sitting there in this one. I think the officers have done well to negotiate it. Now, I totally understand and accept that we all would like to move our medieval roads, as you called them, and I think you're really right. Many of our lanes and even some of our main roads are based on medieval roads, mud, cart tracks which are deemed tarmacked. And you've all heard me talk about the A371. So I do understand and sympathise. But on the other hand, this is a long period for this housing development. And the one thing which has always struck with me, Frome needs housing. Frome desperately needs housing at every level. It's one of the few places where if you want to buy a house, it's really difficult. Go down the road to many of the other places in the Planning East area, and you'll find that the developers have slowed down the build out of housing. House prices have dropped. There is more and more housing sitting around. And I just really do think that we need to recognise that Frome is different from, say, some of the other communities. And I think that with that difference and what this scheme over 15 years can deliver, I think it's not unreasonable to do something. And in terms of what we're being asked to do, I don't think we're in the position of raising and spending tens of thousands on experts to fight the government on this one. I just think that there is a good solid case, a lot of benefits to the community. And yes, we would like more. But hey, let's put this in perspective. So while I do recognise that change is difficult, and I do recognise that the parish council or the town council can have a role in helping argue the case at the public inquiry, I'm not sure necessarily that we as a council should do anything more than just be neutral on this one.
Thank you, Ros. That was very informative. Martin D, please.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to respond to some of those points by saying that, to begin with, we're not talking about Frome. This is Selwood Parish. It's not part of Frome, but inevitably it will impact on the facilities in Frome and the amenities. And it would have to demand a boundary change if that's going to be part of Frome. So we're not talking about Frome, we're talking about a community of 300 people that's going to be expanded by something like 6,000. Now, presumably that eventually will become part of Frome and they'll pay the precept into Frome. But let's get that in perspective. The other thing is I've sat in these meetings where people have rightly, in their own view, argued against the development of 35 or 40 houses in Wells or Glastonbury. We're talking about 1,700 houses here, not 35 or 40. The impact on the town over a 15-year period will be colossal. And I understand there are some mitigating circumstances and some money is available. Personally, I do not think the transport plan, the transport assessment has been anywhere near adequate. And some of the arguments we've had from the floor have voiced that. I think it's really unfortunate with so many flaws in this enormous application. We are making considerations as to how we react to it for financial purposes. And I think that's, in some respects, a dereliction of my duty. Because I don't think the people sitting opposite there, I don't think the people in Frome elected me or any of the Frome people on this committee to just simply cave in when an application of this size comes in. I accept there may have to be a compromise, but I don't think we should underestimate the enormous impact this development is going to make on Frome.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I think I should add at the moment that the town council are in support Frome Town Council. I think that was something I would.
I think they'd be battered into submission.
Yeah, I just thought I'd like to drop that in there. Alison, I think you wish to come in.
Not specifically, but just to remind members that we're not debating the merits of the application here, because we are not the decision maker. The Secretary of State is now the decision maker on this application, and all the comments that I've heard are comments that the inspector will have to consider in making their recommendation to the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Alison. I think we can, best remember as well that we can all go in and make our things to the inspector, make our opinions known. Yeah, Adam, you're next.
Thank you. I mean, Martin Demery is a hard act to follow sometimes, including just now. A hard act to follow. Yeah, I've got some questions. Obviously, things have changed since December. It seems a long time ago. In that the matter's been called in. We are not the decision maker. We have a decision here today to go with the recommendation or otherwise, and to agree the statements made about the NPPF. So that's two things. Well, can we? One question is: can we consider them separately? Can we amend? Can we vote to change the words in any of the statements made? So the conclusions about the compliance with the local plan. Can we have a go at that, or is it all or nothing? Next question is, how will the statement of common ground and any matters in dispute, if any, be agreed? Will councillors on the committee or ward councillors or town and parish council be involved in that process? Because there may be matters in dispute that they want to raise, although it doesn't seem like they do now. So I think town council and parish council as well, I think withdrawing their objection, that changes things for me. Because the local parish are now not objecting, because they've had discussions, because there's more benefits from this development coming. So to clarify, I'd like to clarify, it's not in the report, but the Matthew Kendrick for the LVA, the applicant said that the junction of the A361, A362 at Rodden Down would have some money allocated in the Section 106 agreement. That's not in the report, so I just want to clarify that is the case. And I suppose finally, there's many valid concerns raised by objectors in December and since and today on traffic, on landscape harm, the setting of Frome, and the sewerage impact on the river Frome. But traffic is a big one, and I think the problem in arguing against the traffic point, and I was arguing against it in December, is that there's no chartered professional advice in a report to us to say that there is a severe impact on traffic, which is overwhelmingly bad and is a reason for refusal. Doesn't mean there won't be one, because the objectors, of course, could pay for professional advice that comes up with an alternative view of the modal split, of the trip generation, which they say is underestimated, and I can see that, and the traffic impact on Frome may be underestimated. But question for the highways officer here: is there any concern at all? I know that what you're going to say, but is there any concern at all that the traffic impacts have been underestimated and therefore could be unacceptable? Because some of us are thinking about voting against this neutrality, and I would think, well, on what grounds? And if there's no traffic grounds, if there's no professionally accredited landscape grounds, our landscape officer doesn't object, and if there's no water quality grounds, because that's water quality rather than land use, if there's no actual grounds, if there's no defendable reasons for a refusal or now reasons for objection, what's the purpose of it? What does it might us feel better about objecting to this development, but does that then, if we don't vote to object to this, proactively object to this, now against town council advice, what does that mean for us? How much would it cost this council? What risk would it put the council at? Is it possible that costs would be awarded against us for introducing unreasonable things, or is it just a procedural delay that could be awarded against us? Because I'm not sure really from the report. So is it futile? is resistance futile now? Basically, I see nods. So it's leading me to say, without any reasons for refusal that could stand up in court, it has to be a neutrality here. But I had lots of questions there. So, are there any reasons for objecting to this, potentially, for the council here and now, given that the voters could also make their case? And I'm actually pleased that there's an inquiry, because they can make their case and be cross-examined, and they can cross-examine the developers' witnesses as well. It could be more detailed examination than we can possibly do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know who wants to take that one.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few questions there, Councillor. The first one is the recommendation, and just to be clear, I don't know whether you've got the report in front of you, but where it says under the recommendation, the committee, and you've got 1 and 2. For the purpose of today's meeting, 2 is the only one that a determination needs to be made on, which is just, is it strictly neutral for the recommendation that's being advocated to you? And to be clear about what strictly neutral is, you would be saying to Secretary of State, as a corporate body, we're neither in favour of the scheme, we're not against it. You called it in, that means it's for you to determine it. But the danger, you've asked about costs, the danger of raising a reason for refusal which can't be substantiated is that the appellant could go for a cost application against the council, and the costs that are being mooted potentially could be comfortably above £400,000 all in, and there's a credible risk of that, and a strictly neutral position negates any risk of that, is the point. I hope that
just to add, that doesn't stop third parties and you as members putting forward alternative evidence and information before the inspector. As I've said, and has been said before, the inspector will be considering all material planning considerations and all aspects of the scheme, because they will be considering it as if it was an application, not an appeal. So that's why it's been set down for 12 days, to give ample opportunity for all the matters and all the issues to be comprehensively discussed and raised. The council will still take part in the sessions on conditions and the Section 106 heads of terms, and will be represented at the inquiry in order to be able to fully take part in that session. So we will be seeking to protect the council. I think we also need to be clear that if you look at decisions that have come out recently from the Secretary of State, that the reason for the call-in is because they want to see this approved. So that is where we're going, and I think we just need to be real about that and understand that that's the reality. So to object on technical reasons where we haven't got any support from our statutory consultees would put the council at considerable risk of costs.
Okay, thank you, Alison. I think, Adam, are you happy?
I have some other questions, including...
Okay, yeah, Adrian, in the middle, we'll come back on.
So Rodden Down, is that included on the list potentially? And traffic impact, do we have any residual concerns?
Yeah, Emma.
Morning all. The Highway Authority doesn't have any residual concerns, but we are not any longer the determining authority. The inspector will look at that transport assessment and all the traffic impact assessments provided, including any provided by third parties, and they will be making the decision.
Right, thank you. Emma, go on.
Sorry, yes, just a specific point about the Rodden Down. That was in the heads of terms reported to committee in February, in the February report, so that was already there.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Barry.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems to me we're being asked to vote on these plans, which are not master plans. They're infinitely variable pretty pictures that can be dispensed with at the stroke of a pen, or they can be added to at the stroke of a pen. And we've heard the agents say, well, if we don't agree that this will go forward, he might take away the benefits they've proposed in the 106, which is not a very good starting point. The opportunities for employment, I'm not going to worry too much about what goes on within this estate that's proposed, but the opportunities for employment that this provides for the area generally are fairly small. We don't have a policy within Somerset for any industrial areas in Mendip, and things just happen haphazardly. But somebody thinks, well, it'd be nice if we said there'd be little industrial development down in the soggy bit of ground at the bottom, and that ticks a box somewhere along the way. And that is not really satisfactory. It's just something dumped in and we accept it. The mitigations on the highways, sorry to go back, to pick up the point that Ros made, if these 1,700 houses came in little developments, a few here and a few there, I don't think we would have this kerfuffle, because those sort of developments are going on all the time, all around us. But now somebody wants to come and dump 1,700 houses onto something that is going to make a big difference to the neighbouring parishes apart from anybody else. Trellick's Hill in particular are concerned about the nature reserve that will spring up within their parish, which may or may not be, you know, word, Simon. No, may or not be looked after properly and become a proper nature reserve. But at the moment, those fields and the A361 are the buffer between that little parish and Frome, and they will lose that buffer. And I'm sure they envisage that one day those houses will cross over the A361 and will start encroaching into the fields of their parish as well. The mitigations on the highways, I think in total, all the mitigations, apart from the big A36 improvements and the possibility of the 361, 362 improvements, I think they amount to £1.6 million. Last year, Somerset went through all their traffic lights. I think they did 15 sets of traffic lights and cost £17 million. So for £1.6 million, you can probably build a set of traffic lights. That is not going to help the people in the boats or elsewhere in Frome that are going to see immense traffic problems.
Really?
Pardon?
Somebody online.
And the A361, where we have been told in the past we can't do anything traffic mitigation there because we wouldn't have a 3-lane highway in that situation. Now, there are several 3-lane highways. There's one at Farrington Gurney, there's one at Temple Cloud, there's one on the way out to Bath on the Frome Road out there. And if you travel into Wiltshire at all, you'll see there are loads of 3-lane highways. So I know Emma told us that, but I don't think that is particularly true. And the Roads and Bridges manual that has been quoted to me actually determines that there should be a climbing lane. So unless those issues are addressed, the traffic is going to be a complete nightmare within that development. I think that's all my points I wanted to make, Chairman. Well, I just say at the end, I think minutes are important, by the way. We don't have them near enough. When Hansard do minutes, they write down everybody's word. Now, I know we can't do that, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Yeah. Did you like to come in? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Councillor Clark, your immediate point at the outset was we're being asked to determine certain plans. And I think that suggests that I haven't explained clearly, which can only be my fault, what the decision is that you're making here today and what the implication of a call-in application is. A call-in application is extremely rare, so it's likely that this might be the only occasion that this planning committee's ever encountered a call-in, but they don't happen often. And it's essentially the Secretary of State saying, rather than you as a local body who would normally be entitled to make a decision on this application, Secretary of State saying, I'm going to deprive you of the opportunity to make any decision on this, and I'm going to make it on your behalf. And that is extremely unusual. When it happens, it's almost always the case that they go ahead and grant it. I'm not saying that will necessarily be the case here, but that's typically the circumstances where there is a call-in. And the question that you're being asked is not to determine whether the scheme is good or bad or otherwise. It's that, are you going to spend money on you saying, well, we object to this proposal or we support this proposal? And the position that is being recommended to you is you spend no money, or the least amount of money as possible, and you say, we're not going to make any determination on it because you've deprived us of that, Secretary of State. So we're going to leave it to you. We're neutral because you've taken away the decision process from us, and we're going to leave it to you. That doesn't stop anyone in this room from turning up to that inquiry and making any point, including the points you've made there, including all the points that we've heard today. You can say whatever you like. It's simply, are the council going to be spending their resources on making a case one way in favour or against it? And the position that's being recommended is say nothing on it. The Secretary of State's saying they're going to make the decision, so leave it to the Secretary of State and don't expend resources on it. And that's the cheapest outcome, because the other outcome is you do spend money on it. Immediately you're spending your own money, but if it's found that you've spent money and objected to something unreasonably, there's a risk of a very high cost award. And I've said it's going to be, I mean, it's at least, and I'm talking at least £400,000, all in. And given I'm involved in these things, it's going to be much more than that, I anticipate. So that's essentially, when you're being asked your opening point, Councillor Clark, that we're being asked to look at certain plans, it's not the point. You're not being asked to make any determination on plans. In fact, the recommendation is you don't make a decision on it, you adopt a neutral position. Leave it to the Secretary of State, because that's the nature of a call-in application. I hope that point's clear, because it's really important you understand the unusual reality of what a call-in is, because as I said, it's probably not something you'll have encountered previously.
Thank you very much. And Susie, your turn.
Thank you. This whole situation is far from ideal. However, it could lead to the financial ruin of this council, and I really think we need to think that one through. We are ultimately responsible as councillors to the people we represent not to waste their money. Now, whilst this may not be an ideal scenario, we have to provide housing, not least because historically Mendip has not allowed the required level of housing to be provided. Hence, we were taken to judicial review and ordered to provide the correct amount of housing. In this situation, matters are being taken out of our hands. The decision will be made despite what we may or may not desire. So, why would we risk any more loss of funds? Because even a neutral stance is still going to cost us money. And all of this because we didn't actually look at the big picture when this came to committee originally. We can't keep on doing this. Unfortunately, in life, sometimes we have to choose the least bad decision. That's the boat we're in. So please let us all strongly consider doing the sensible thing and voting to take a neutral stance, because it has been explained to us time and time again that the inspector will look at all the pros and cons before making a decision on this application. And I hope that is crystal clear. I mean, if my understanding is wrong, please somebody tell me I'm wrong.
Okay, thanks, Susie. Dawn.
Thank you. Just to get it clear in my head, this is not really about what we like and what we don't like, or what the community feels or doesn't feel about this application. It's simply about how it fits into national and local policy and legislation. So I have felt that this process is a bit like squeezing a square peg into a round hole, even if it doesn't fit. And for this to go, for Selwood community garden community to go ahead, well, the Secretary of State will need to see the peg in the hole. And for us, that may seem like at all costs. We know that law, policy and strategy is open to interpretation. But if we want to go with the officer recommendation, then we need to round the peg or square the hole. But if we want to oppose, then we need to ensure that the peg isn't rounded and that the hole isn't squared. But right now, I feel like it's out of our hands. and the weight is behind the mallet. Shepton mallet, maybe? And that will...
You did that.
Thank you very much. I'll come every Tuesday. It'll be the mallet that will hammer this peg in, and no matter how comfortable it feels in the hole, that's just what it's going to be. And yeah, that's my view at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dawn, and your contribution. Helen, we're back to you.
All right, thank you. First of all, I know we're not supposed to be debating the actual issues today, but did you want to come back, Susanna? Yeah, okay. Yeah. She was saying, can we have a toilet break at some point? Maybe in 10 minutes, I don't know.
Okay, let's Helen, and then we'll take a comfort break for 5 minutes because we've got to be finished by 12.
Okay. Okay, so just to challenge, I don't believe in the very simplistic supply and demand model of housing. Just to want to state that you don't, if you've got a housing shortage, just building lots and lots of houses, that is not going to just solve the problem, because as we all know, developers build out slowly on purpose to keep house prices up. That's my experience. Secondly, although we do need a lot of housing, affordable housing, the way that our Home Finder works, we need affordable housing for people in Frome. It means that people from Taunton or Bridgewater or wherever may well get priority. They may get those houses, so it may not satisfy our housing crisis in Frome. We were told we were not taken to the judicial review because of lack of housing. That's just a point of information, Susie, because it was actually to do with where an extra 505 houses had been allocated. They were in the wrong place. That's why we were taken to judicial review. So just going on to this, my technical questions, it's about whether it does seem to me this is about whether we accept, approve or support, because as I asked earlier, by going neutral and stating that we are not going to put any defence forward, we are weakly supporting the application. And I just wanted to ask if you knew about Blandford Forum, where, as I understand it from a Frome Town Council meeting, I was told that in Blandford Forum that because of the way things had worked out, it was something that to do with non-determination. But the council actually, in the end, approved of a large application. The applicant approved of a large application. It went to inquiry, I believe, and the inspector threw it out because he said, if you've got the same position, so for example, if we've got the same position as the applicant, that we don't get a proper hearing at the inquiry. Am I worrying unnecessarily about that? So that's my first question, another technical question. Secondly, going back to what Adam said, I don't think he was answered properly, which was, how do we arrive at this statement of common ground? Is that something that officers draft? Is it run past anybody like the chair? Is it run past me as a divisional member? Is it for this application? And can we have some small differences? So, for example, the sorry, I've forgotten your name, Mark, over there, who represented Friends of the River Frome, who I know has a history himself of being a planner, has suggested that we put in a condition asking for a proper sewage a plan about how it's going to be delivered up front, and that goes in, and at the moment it's quite a weak condition in the report. Gwilym I think has already maybe done some work on that, but you know, something like that could be one of the extra conditions that we ask for. Also, we've got £100,000 put aside for this junction at 361, 362, I believe, in the section 106, to look at a feasibility study of what works could be done there to make it safer. It would be great if there was actually a bit of delivery money as well. So is this something that we could talk about today, or have we got to park all that and do it at the inquiry? Because if we did it today, yes, Susie, that's right. I'm asking for us to do it today because that could be one of the things that is not part of the statement of common ground. It's one of the things that we have that's slightly different, because otherwise our statement of common ground is just going to be, oh, we agree with the application. Is it not? No.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Who would like to answer?
I actually, sorry, I had one or two more points, which was that I also wanted to know about the fact that we haven't liaised with Wiltshire or Baines about this, and this came up in December. And I found, going through my files, this the other day, which is about the A36 corridor. Susie, it's putting me off with you talking all the time. Yeah. Yeah, excuse me, Chair, can I continue without interruption?
If you're very quick, Helen.
Okay, well, there's basically, this shows the A36 corridor, and it shows all the developments going on in Calne, Corsham, Chippenham, Bradford-on-Avon, Melksham, Trowbridge, Westbury, Warminster. Over 1 million homes that have been built out there. We should be considering the A36 altogether. It may be that highways have done that. And lastly, I'd just like to say that it isn't about money. I'd like to support what Martin Dimmery said, and we're not going to break the council and make it bankrupt by spending up to 400 grand on this. If it was 400 million, I might agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you. Just a few points there. There was a reference to an appeal for non-determination that might have been in Wiltshire. That's a different route, and that's again me trying to bring in the emphasis between a difference between a call-in and a non-determination. A non-determination appeal is where the council were the deciding body and they failed to make a decision, but they were still the deciding body. A call-in is, again, the Secretary of State, a very unusual circumstance where the Secretary of State says, you council are not to make a determination. So that comparison doesn't work. The Secretary of State will be making the decision in the knowledge that they are the first person to be making a decision. That's the whole point of the call-in. Statement of common ground, that wouldn't typically go through councillors. It would normally be dealt with by officers, but the statement of common ground would reflect if the recommendation was adhered to, would reflect the position that the council haven't made a determination. So it wouldn't be saying we agree with the appellant or the applicant that these points are good. It would be saying we haven't made a determination. So it would be essentially offering a neutral, and I mean that emphatically because it's not a weak support. It's we aren't the deciding body. We haven't made a decision on this. So we are saying nothing on it. That's what the statement of common ground would reflect. As regards the conditions in Section 106 agreement, you would need to park that, and it wouldn't be a determination for today's session because the recommendation of strict and neutral is specifically on the principal development. Matters of conditions in Section 106, the council can and indeed will offer whatever evidence they want to make sure that the conditions in Section 106 agreement secure everything that the council think are required. And the determination of strictly neutral today wouldn't deprive the council of doing anything. I mean, putting it another way, if the recommendation is followed, an inquiry will be had, there will be a condition session, there will be a Section 106 session. The council will attend that and ask for all the money and drainage conditions and whatnot that are required. And the strict and neutral position would not deprive the council of doing that. And the final point of having liaised with Wiltshire or Baines, well, again, that forgets what we're here to do, which is that the Secretary of State is the determining body. So it's neither this council who are determining it, nor Wiltshire or Baines who will be making a determination. So you wouldn't ask them what their view is because they're not the determining body, nor are you. It's the Secretary of State who's determining this. I hope that's answered all the questions. I tried to make a note, Councillor Casey was speaking. Apologies if I've missed anything, it wasn't deliberate.
Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take a break for...
Chair, sorry. Councillor Sully really wanted to come back on something and I think you missed it just before the break, if that's okay.
Okay, yes.
Only because, Chair, you did agree. You said yes, and actually the point I want to make is I'm encouraged to make the point again by what you've just said there. You've said you've explained to us again, you know, why we're here, right? Which I believe we do understand. But I think but I'd like to ask your understanding for us as members, because I think Alison said it. She said that the government, Secretary of State, would approve, is going to approve this housing. Obviously, Alison doesn't know, but that was your opinion. So you've also said that this is unprecedented. So, you know, this is a new situation we're in. But Alison said that this is the government's direction of travel is to approve this housing. So you're asking us to ignore that, right? You're asking us to not think that the decision we make today isn't going to, for those who feel for valid reasons that we don't want it approved, if we feel in this unprecedented situation that there's things we might be able to do, because if it's unprecedented, it's not been done before. So if we feel that by having a council that does have a proactive view on this, it might stop that direction of travel, which Alison says is looking like it's going to happen. So that's my first point. Your understanding of us and where we are and why we are where we are. And secondly, just quickly to say that I think we've got to be careful by saying that Somerset Council is going to go bankrupt. I know I've said things on the line before, and you as officers have said to me, "Oh, Claire, be careful about saying things like that because people can get the wrong idea and jump to conclusions." But saying that we might go bankrupt over 400,000 when we're talking about 100 million gap in potentially in the future, that and we've had a balanced budget for the last 3 years, so we found solutions. But if 400,000 is going to make the Somerset Council go bankrupt, it's not correct, and no officer has said anything about that, and opposed that. Is 400,000 going to make Somerset Council bankrupt? And two, is this a decision about money? Are we in a finance committee? That's my questions.
Okay, who's going to take that one?
I'm happy to. For the avoidance of doubt, the bankrupt position didn't emanate from this table, so that I'm not privy to the council's finances, but I know that no officer nor did I said that £400,000 was going to make the council bankrupt. I think it might have been yourself, councillor, but the simple point is that's not something that I'm giving advice on. I'm simply saying that there is a credible risk of that sum of money. What that does to the council and how that impacts on the council's finances, I'm giving no view on. The unprecedented point, I wasn't saying it was unprecedented nationally. I was saying it was unprecedented for you, specifically this planning committee. That's why I was keen to try and emphasise what this actually is. It's not unprecedented nationally. In fact, it happens not so off. It happens. It's not rare for it to happen. Alison's point was when it does happen, it tends to be the case the Secretary of State has called it in to grant. Now, we don't know that that will necessarily be the case here. The Secretary of State can make whatever decision they want, having heard the evidence. But Alison's point was, when this tends to happen, it tends to be the case that the Secretary of State has called it in for the reason to grant permission. And in those circumstances, does the council want to be expending considerable resources against technical consultees resisting it, when the outcome may well be that permission is still granted, but there's a hefty cost order against the council? I hope that's clear.
Yeah, but then do you understand our concerns for those who've got concerns on that planning application?
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that the inspector will hear all of those concerns and consider all of that evidence in coming to their recommendation to make to the Secretary of State. So all of those issues that we would normally as a local planning authority determine ourselves will be matters for the Secretary of State. So anything of any concern, they will hear, they will see all of the information that has been submitted to the council already, either in support or opposed to the application, all the technical evidence and consultee comments that have been made. And that's why the inquiry has been set down for so many days, because there will be a lot of information for them to go through. And as I said before, anyone in this room, and indeed anyone else, can attend that inquiry and make representations either for or against the application, recommend conditions, Section 106, payments, etc. It's an application that will be determined by the Secretary of State, not by us.
Okay, thank you. We're having a 10-minute break and that's it. And when you come back, we've got to start thinking about a decision. Okay, because we have to vacate the room at 12 at the latest. Okay, Helen, we're just waiting on you, please. Right, okay. And we can go back. We're going to go to Martin, which was Martin D.
Yeah, just quickly, I think we've heard a lot of recommendations, a lot of advice, which I think everybody around the room gets. I don't think we need it explained too much. I think the reason we're looking at detail is because the concern that's still in the back of our minds and everybody's mind, which is what we really want to know is, can you categorically say that an opinion offered by this committee will carry no weight with an inspector?
Don't think I understand the question, to be honest.
Let me put it again in a different way. If we are some of the reason why some of these questions have been asked about the actual planning application, the detail of the planning, is because before we make a decision as to whether we want to be neutral or not, we want to know whether or not the council is the council doing itself any favours by adopting a neutral position. In other words, should it actually be presenting the case against? So will the inspector listen to what the council has to say?
To be truthful, a good point is a good point, whoever makes it. So if you were to attend, for argument's sake, let's say the committee adopted the neutral position and you were to attend that committee, the planning inquiry, and you were to make a transport objection, as you've sort of articulated earlier today, if it's a good point, whether it comes from you or whether it comes from the council as a corporate body, doesn't matter. If it's a good point, it will land ultimately. So who it comes from is not particularly important, with the exception of statutory consultees. So as a matter of law, the inspector is required to give significant weight to the statutory consultees, such as Highways England or whoever the relevant statutory consultee. They're required to give significant weight to those statutory consultees. But I hope that answers your question.
As best you can, I expect. Yeah, that's not to be patronising. I'm just simply saying yes. I get it.
Okay, thank you for that. Ros, you're up next. Maybe you were going to have a proposal, I don't know.
I was going to actually correct, and I think Helen did so, that Mendip JR was not around us failing to do something. We actually followed the local planning inspectorate to a T, and it was the local planning inspectorate's decision, which was then challenged very forcibly, and Mendip had to be part of that litigation. But it definitely was not the officers or the councils or the councillors' error in any way. And I think that given that Part 2 local plan continues to trundle along, I think we just need to be clear on that. I'm quite happy to go to support a recommendation, but we accept the recommendation from the officers, but you may have some other speakers.
Yeah, we've got other speakers, but I will take that as a proposal, Ros.
Thank you.
And we'll find you a seconder, I'm sure. Susie?
Yeah, number one, I'm happy to second. Number two, being part of litigation, any litigation is expensive. And at this point, I think it is our duty to try and keep that cost as low as possible. And the £400,000 was the minimum of what it would cost. And it could easily escalate to £1 million. And actually any pounds are pounds down the drain at this point. And I think that they would directly affect how this planning department is able to work. The money would come out of this department, which would be a real negative. But yeah, I'd love to second, and I hope we can go to the vote.
We've got a couple more people to speak first before we go to the vote. Adam, you wish to come in?
Thank you. A couple of questions. I think I know the answer to one. The question is, how much would this improve the 5-year housing supply for this council in the East and Froomes housing crisis? And secondly, are there going to be any other opportunities for members, ward members or others on this committee to input to the council stance at inquiry, such as about conditions in Section 106 agreement, but also the potential matters in dispute. Any inputs at all? Otherwise, the officer's opinion and stance and December committee report would go forward to inquiry. Is there any opportunity for, say, Councillor Kay or Dimery, the ward members, to input to the council, start to strengthen conditions proposed, and so, or would it be simply a matter for them to represent themselves at inquiry? Thank you.
I can. Yeah. The two questions. So one was, will it improve the council's 5-year supply position? The answer to that is no. That is true of any application that was being considered of any scale. That's just the nature of 5-year supply calculations. That any this stuff gets complicated. But if this was for 1 unit, or if it was for 1,700 units, or if it's for 100 units, it doesn't make a difference. It's about the timing. 5-year supply is determined against what's called a base date, which is in the past, and it was the consideration of 5-year supply at that point in time. So any application that was approved today wouldn't contribute to that 5-year supply. It contributes to next year's 5-year supply and the year after that 5-year supply. That's just true of any housing application considered anywhere in the country. But the second question is, can you have input in conditions in Section 106 agreement? I've asked officers about that particular point, and the yes is ultimately, I mean, it's dealt with informally. I don't think there's a specific route to it. I don't know whether, Alison, you've got a view on that, but ultimately, yes.
I think obviously we've got a list of conditions that were attached to the February committee and also the heads of terms. So that's the starting point. If there are comments and issues that are raised either now, between now and the inquiry, or indeed issues will come up during the inquiry itself, as I've mentioned, we will be taking part in the conditions in the Section 106 discussion. So if issues arise during the lifetime of the inquiry, we can talk about what that means for the conditions in the heads of terms at that point.
Thank you. One more question, but actually this is for the committee.
If you've got a question,
we've got a resolution and it's been seconded, but is there any alternative? Thank you.
That's not.
So you've got you take the resolution also. Chairman, just to say, obviously, we have returned. We have got a resolution to support the officer recommendation, and that's also been seconded. So now, as a committee, you've got the opportunity to take that vote,
Which I think we will do.
Point of order, you did say that you let a few people speak before we took the vote.
Well, I'm going to, yeah, okay, Helen, you're the last one to speak. Okay, so that's quite fitting, actually. You had a good share of the speaking today. Okay, go for it.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to put forward a counter proposal, which is that this council does not consider that the proposed development is consistent with government policies for, and of the 5 things that we're looking at today, particularly promoting sustainable transport or conserving and enhancing the natural environment. Neither is it consistent with the spatial strategy set out in local plan, core policy 1, core policy 4, etc. And I would need to just check the policies. I've got the local plan here, but they're the ones. So basically, I'm reversing what Gwilym has said. It will add to the supply. I have, of the 5 criteria, it will add to the housing supply. There will be some economic development. I'm not entirely happy with the fact that there's no plan really for the type of economic development, but I'm prepared to accept that as a weak argument. However, I think that we could argue against this on the fact that it doesn't promote sustainable transport. We know that 60% of people work outside Frome, commute out. It doesn't conserve and enhance the natural environment, most of all the river, and it isn't consistent with our spatial strategies. Now, that might also be a weak point, but I think the strongest 2 are sustainable transport and conserving and enhancing the natural environment. So I'd just like to put forward that as a counter proposal, please. And I don't know if I've got a seconder.
No, thank you. I think Simon would like to come in.
Members, just obviously Councillor Kay has expressed an opinion there, but just to remind you, you've got a vote on the table that's been seconded, so that's what you must now consider before you even consider what Councillor Kay said.
Okay, thank you. So we will go with the vote that was proposed by Ros and seconded by Susie. And so all those in favour of going with the officer recommendation, please put your hands in the air now. Who's counting? 8. All those against? And abstentions? Okay, so the motion's carried. We go with the officer recommendation. Thank you. I'm not sure if we've got any other business today.
No other business, Chair.
Okay, that's it then. We're finished. We can go home. Thank you. End of meeting.